United were terrible against Newcastle United. The game against St James's Park was the Red Devils' first in 16 days. It was expected that Ralf Rangnick's men would pile further misery on the Magpies, who are in deep relegation trouble. However, the home side played like a team that was aiming for a top 4 finish, as their guests laboured through the 90 minutes, playing with a sense of aimlessness about them. When Rangnick arrived at Old Trafford, he knew that he'd inherited quite a few problems, but even the German tactician wouldn't have expected his players to play the way that they played in Newcastle. Something has to change, but time is short. Luis Suarez becomes a free agent at the end of the current campaign, and the legendary Uruguayan forward has quite a few options on the table once his contract with Atletico Madrid expires. Juventus are keen to find a long-term replacement for Cristiano Ronaldo, whose goals they have sorely missed. Who will the Bianconeri sign next summer? Rafinha has left PSG to sign for a team in Spain where he might be able to revive his career. According to reports, the leaders of Real Madrid and PSG are not getting along, with Florentino Perez feeling that Nasser El Khelaïfi is plotting against him. Before we get started, we want to share the sponsor of today's video. The OneFootball app is the ultimate football platform and is a must-have for every football fan, so that you can follow all of your favourite leagues, teams and players all the time right from your phone. You can be sure to turn on notifications for specific players to be instantly alerted when they score a goal or when they're involved in other breaking news. It is the best and easiest way to stay up to date with everything football. Click the link in the description down below to download the app right now. You won't regret it. The situation is alarming. With 27 goals scored in 19 Serie A matches, Juventus are far from being at the level of their rivals. League leaders Inter Milan have 49 goals, AC Milan 40 goals, while Atalanta have found the net 38 times. The 11th best attack in Serie A, in the same way as Bologna and Sampdoria, and behind teams like Empoli or Hellas Verona, Juventus are far from meeting the requirements of their status. Worse, the club's top scorer over the calendar year in all competitions is Cristiano Ronaldo, with 20 goals in 31 games. His departure has left a big void that hasn't been filled yet. Whether it's Moise Kean with 4 goals in 20 matches, Alvaro Morata with 7 goals in 23 matches, Paulo Dybala with 8 goals in 18 matches, Federico Bernardeschi with 1 goal in 19 matches, Dejan Kulusevski with 1 goal in 21 matches, or Federico Chiesa 3 goals in 16 matches, nobody has been able to fill in the Portuguese forward's contribution up front. This kind of makes Giorgio Chiellini's comments of Juventus doing well after Ronaldo left quite redundant. Morata isn't even sure whether he will be retained on a permanent basis. Arkadiusz Milik's name has been mentioned, but it remains to be seen whether the Turin Giants have the financial capability to make the move happen. Juve would love to sign Fiorentina's Dusan Vlahovic, but the Serb is going to cost a fortune. The Vecchia Signora is also eyeing a move for Mauro Icardi, but the player's salary demands are pretty steep. Real Sociedad's Alexander Isak is another player who might do the trick, but the Swedish striker's talents haven't convinced the Italians. It now appears that the Bianconeri have set their sights on Gianluca Scamacca, who has scored 6 goals in 19 games for Sassuolo. The Italian striker has also been linked with Inter Milan, AC Milan and Fiorentina and will cost around 40 million euros. Juve will have to act quickly on their interest, but will have to sell a player or two in winter before they can even think about buying someone. Anyone who's followed the Spanish Championship at least knows how decisive Luis Suarez was in Atletico de Madrid's coronation last season. The Uruguayan had scored 21 goals in 32 La Liga games, and many of them came with valuable points for Diego Simeone's side. But this season it's much more complicated. A little less efficient, despite an honourable return, 7 goals in 18 league games, there is talk about some tension with Diego Simeone. We saw it against Sevilla when the striker insulted his coach at the time of being replaced, while several Spanish media outlets spoke about the enormous dissatisfaction of the former Barca man with El Cholo's methods. Suffice it to say that it's difficult to see him extending his contract, which expires in June. And as various Spanish and Latin American media outlets indicate, El Pistolero has 2 options on the table: the MLS, where Inter Miami continue to bat their eyelashes, as well as Corinthians, determined to sign a star striker. In the past, Luis Suarez has admitted to be interested in the MLS challenge, while the Brazilian team would allow him to fight for the Copa Libertadores. In both cases, the former Barca man could also receive a substantial windfall. The ball is in his court, but we might be witnessing the last months of the iconic Uruguayan in Europe. Rafinha will finally be able to stop chomping at pieces. Arriving at Paris Saint-Germain in the summer of 2020, the 28-year-old Brazilian midfielder has only played 39 matches in a year and a half, with 7 starts and 0 goals. A rather poor record for the native of Sao Paulo, whose situation has become very complicated this season. Not falling into Mauricio Pochettino's plans, he only played 5 games in the current year. Not included in the Champions League squad and not used since last October 15th. In a 2-1 victory against Angers, he only took part in 220 minutes of Ligue 1. It is therefore on this very disappointing note that the younger brother of Thiago Alcantara had to look elsewhere to revive his career. Eager to strengthen their midfield, Real Sociedad decided to bet on the former Blaugrana man. Still under contract until June 2023 with PSG, Rafinha will be loaned without an option to buy until the end of the season in the Basque Country. 6th in La Liga, they're aiming for European qualification and, if possible, a place in the Champions League. It's up to Rafinha to make the final decision of his long-term future, since he will face a lot of competition for a place in the starting 11. In recent years, Real Madrid and PSG have always maintained cordial relations. It is with FC Barcelona that the Parisians have been very often opposed on many hot issues. But since last summer, everything has been shattered between Florentino Perez and Nasser Al-Khelaifi, in large part because of Madrid's insistence on buying Kylian Mbappe. This week, Marca looked back on this war being waged by the leaders of the Spanish Championship and the French Championship. The newspaper indicates that the tension continues to grow, in particular because, according to PSG, Real Madrid were not honest in their pursuit of Mbappe. And the more the team of the City of Light feels that the player escapes them, the more the decision makers at Parc des Princes grumble against the people of Madrid. The upcoming Champions League game between the two promises to be very hot, and we know that the player will not communicate any decision until the 2 encounters are finished. For his part, and this is the big novelty of this article, Florentino Perez suspects PSG and Al-Khelaifi of using their influence within UEFA and pushing Ceferin to take strong sanctions against Real Madrid following their involvement in the Super League affair. It must be mentioned that Al-Khelaifi is the boss of the ECA, the European Association of Clubs, and that he therefore has a certain power within the authorities. From there to say that he uses it to take revenge on Real Madrid, well, only he knows that. But one thing is certain, we will have a great time watching the round of 16 clash between these two sides at the end of February and the beginning of March. In difficulty at St James's Park, Manchester United could only snatch a draw against Newcastle United. The Magpies, amazing on Monday evening, might even have some regrets. Things are not going well for United despite a managerial change. They're not playing like a team that's aiming for a top 4 finish, let alone domestic success. They might have some good players in there, but most of them cut anonymous and frustrated figures. While the English commentators have a habit of jumping up and down every time an English player completes a basic pass or does something great, they lead people further astray by ignoring things these players do wrong on the field. Take, for instance, Marcus Rashford. Now, we're not saying he's overrated. Actually, maybe we are. Marcus Rashford has not managed to develop at all in the last 2 years, and he's making the same mistakes that you would expect from a teenager who's just been thrown in at the deep end. The winger insists on taking players on, but doesn't really know how to dribble. On a rare occasion when he does manage to beat a player, it's mostly due to a stroke of luck or a random second touch falling into his path. While Fred's inability to be a passing midfielder has been talked about a lot, Scott McTominay isn't without blame either. The Scotland international tends to make poor decisions, and during the game against Newcastle United, it was all heart and little skill. This brings us back to Harry Maguire, who was supposed to be a game changer. As it turns out, the United captain doesn't operate like the sharpest tool in the shed. Every time he received the ball, he spent an eternity to determine his next move, before passing the ball back to Raphael Varane. Maguire, if you're supposed to go for a sideways pass anyway, then why did you take so much time to do it in the first place? This is one player who really needs to be put through some mental exercises because his decision-making is slower than the progress made by countries to reduce global warming. So there you have it. This is what's wrong with United. It isn't Ralf Rangnick, and on the evidence of the game against Eddie Howe's side, it wasn't Solskjaer either. 90% of the United players are not in a great state of mind, and something has to be done. No wonder the German enlisted the services of a psychologist. I mean, at Goalside, we've discussed a lot of reasons why United are in trouble, and we feel that now it's safe to say that the reason they're not playing at a level that we know they can is down to attitude and mentality. Hopefully, the psychologist will solve this issue. They might do that, or they might end up questioning their decision to become a sports psychologist.